there's been a discussion on is WoW too bloated, and I think the chain of things here is you were explaining some hero talent stuff to me. I think it was after we went through the mage, like the Frostfire mage stuff, where it almost reads like a parody, just because you're like, yes, a Frostfire this, Frost that, get your, it's all just, it's like you've looked at the words fire and frost so much, they don't even look like words anymore. And I think there was another one as well. So I just kind of thought, Matt, this is way too overcooked. There's way too much design here. What's going on? And then then Asmongold reacted to that. Now Jack has reacted to Asmongold. Yes, it was this, right?
It was this where you're sitting here, you're like, what?
Flash, freeze, burn, frost, fire, empowerment, excess fire, excess frost, and they're just kind of like, this is all just stuff.
But it was mostly us laughing at, are you a Frostfire fire mage or a Frostfire frost mage? And you're like, what? Can you not just say Frostfire mage? No, you can't. Because Frostfire fire and Frostfire frost are two entirely different things. And it's just, I am a triple F mage. You can't even say that. You have to be like an FFFI or an FFFR. What do you mean?
So that was kind of the bit where, because I guess the thing to remember is, I suppose while we are in the WoW community, we're like on our own island, very far away from all of the normal discourse. So I suppose whenever we see things, we just kind of talk about them. But I guess talk about them really without much of a filter of prior community understanding, other than what Dakor puts in our show notes. Because other than that, we're mostly just in our lanes having fun. So yes, that was applied. Anyway, this happened. I just had the reaction of this. There's too much here. This isn't going to be fun and exciting to somebody because it just kind of looks like a whole bunch of modifiers and things on top of a class that, broadly speaking, in Dragonflight, people broadly speaking are sort of happy with. Yeah. Not talking specifically about Mage, but in general, I think now that we've reached the end of this expansion, there's quite a lot of decently positive opinions on the design of classes.
Yeah, it's the kind of awkward part where you're like, okay, you've just spent an entire expansion making this, tweaking the issues, getting rid of the problems. Like, okay, well, what issues are left? Not very many. We've got everything balanced kind of within reason. We've figured things out. We've got our tier sets. What are you going to do now that you've finished? Throw it out and start again. Which isn't literally true, but it feels that way when you're just dumping a load of the stuff on top. And obviously in a limited slightly fashion. But at the same time, you look up here and you're like, okay, so Frost now has to deal with balancing this whole tree. And also the whole Spellslinger tree, which we haven't seen yet. And this tree also has to be balanced around fire, balancing Sun Fury or Frostfire.
And Spellslinger's got to be balanced around Arcane and so on and so forth.
And you're like, that sounds
hell.
Like a challenge.
That sounds like hell. Yeah. I hope you have 10 trillion people to work in this. Who knows? Maybe they just have a banging prompt they've engineered for some fucking AI. So please help. Please, this is too much for a human to parse. Which, I mean, it's not, and in the tight bound of playing your spec, all of this will be stuff that you'll probably be able to grasp within 30 minutes of actually playing with it, because all of this seems so much less tangible and, to pardon the groan, arcane when you're reading it and it's just text. But when you're actually feeling it and playing it, there'll be some passives that don't friggin' matter because they're just some damage modifier that you never think about again. But I think whenever I was thinking of it, my main thought was, this feels like too much. This feels overcooked. Surely there are more interesting things that could be worked on. That was, I think my main perspective was one, it was maybe, I don't want to say, I suppose it's a little bit conservative. It's almost thinking well, if it ain't broke, which is to say maybe continue to hone and iterate and have some good, maybe revamps of specs that need it. Kind of Dragonflight approach. You can do some of those, and then maybe, what other feature could we have with this amount of development time? Because I don't really know what other things a class team could be working on. I don't really, I don't know. are those also people who could work in bosses or could work in implementation for things or could work in a new system? I have absolutely no idea because I don't know none of us really know how that team is sliced up at the end of the day.
Yeah, could they work on a talent system for a horizontal piece of content instead?
Yeah.
Of vertically integrating with all of the existing stuff. Because I think, like, obviously, chat sure has their opinions on this, where, like, obviously, Dreamers, like, I know it's popular to bash on WoW, but none of this will matter for an average player. I don't agree with that entirely, because the average player does have to look at their talent trees, and if you decide, well, the average player then just goes to WoW and copy and paste, well, then it does matter to them, because they're making not to say a shit decision, but they're making a boring decision, and they get a whole amount of video game is made for them to not deal with. And that's the consistent problem of how much of this shit is going to matter to only the handful of people who theory craft it and then post on WoW which one to pick. Is that going to be the level of engagement? Because that was designed to not be the level of engagement with the basic talent systems. Dragonflight. And for the most part, early on, I think they managed to do a pretty decent job of that, where a lot more people were engaging with it more naturally. And it didn't feel quite as stupid and boring as the Mists pick your handful of stuff. But that was made for, like, the Mists choice was made for a decision, or for a reason rather. And that reason was, this shit's too complicated, people are just copy pasting. And this is going to ultimately end up in, I think, a lot of the same problem. It's just also got the little bit of meshing with the visual appearance stuff, which could make someone make a change. You know, someone could say, I would like to be a spellslinger frost mage because I don't really want fire in my frost. And that's perfectly fine for them as an average player. I think that's okay. But, like, it just... I can't see the average player engaging with this, which means, why is it being made?
Yeah, so to them it could end up being a bunch of noise, and sometimes when confronted with noise or something that doesn't have, like, design clarity, people will just kind of glass over and be like,
yeah, you switch off.
Yeah, not interested.
Because that's immediately half of my stuff to this. As from a player perspective, from a perspective of someone who's trying to look at it and, like, read these from, like, how are these designed game design wise, I think it's actually quite interesting. Like, you look at these, you go, in isolation, this does make some interesting stuff, like the fire and frost mastery. You get that completely stacked up whenever you hit your combustion or icy veins, which means you're going to get an awful lot of extra haste. Or is it haste? It's haste mastery. You're going to get that. That sounds like a pretty fun little bit. You've got some choices to make in terms of, like, which way you're going for your, severe temperatures, or your thermal conditioning, or, your imbued warding and well done. And those are kind of there, but it feels like just do we need all of this is kind of the question. And it's a question that's being raised by Jack, right?
It is.
Because the reason we're talking about this today is because someone else talked about it again.
Yep, I certainly remember in around the start of Dragonflight with where Disc Priest was. This is something Jack was talking about as well. There was just quite a lot. Well, there's just a lot of setup and that kind of thing. So, Matt, how about you start us off?
Yeah, so long story short, Jack reacts to Asmongold's reaction of us talking about this stuff. And he brings up an awful lot of points, which I kind of made pretty boiled down here just for the sake of it. We talks about, like, the idea of cognitive load, talks about Overcooked and PI, and how that was horribly unbalanced for the whole situation of, like, now to do the max damage possible, which was lots of people's goal, it was not go in and do your rotation. It's not go in and do your rotation with the best talent setup. It's not go in and do your best rotation with the best talent setup, with the best gear. It's now go in with the best execution, best talent setup for that situation, best gear, sometimes that situation when it comes to trinkets and stat weights. Also bring an Ogvoker and also get PI.
And ensure that Mercury is in retrograde.
Exactly, 100%. If you, like, was it like a quarter moon? What the fuck are you even doing playing? Like, log out, bro. If push week aligns with the full moon, go for it. But any other time, why bother logging in?
Yeah, just a full stack of big hairy Worgans, moons out. It's push week. Yeah. You're ready to go. Yeah,
so obviously, like, min-maxing is one element, right? And you go, well, you just don't have to min-max. And there's truth to that, but also min-maxing is how a lot of people play the game culturally.
Yeah, and it's also, like, fun.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Like, for a lot of people, it's fun. And certainly, like, if you're playing DPS and maybe you change a few things around with your build, you try something out, maybe you try something in a build that aligns well with timings in a fight and you get a better result, that feels really good because you've applied yourself and, got a better result by using the game mechanics. Happy.
Yeah, and the
problem is, what if too much? makes sad.
Yeah, and the consistent addition of complexity results in the cognitive load of you thinking, what button am I going to press next? You start to get overwhelmed. You have too many things in your brain, and your brain short circuits. And this is like a natural part of designing games. As anyone who's played any, like, you play fighting games, it's all about the mental stack in a lot of cases. Like at a decent level of competition, you play FF14. You feel, oh, boss design is based around how stressed I am and how much I can remember what's coming next.
Yeah.
And not even just like, oh, like a simple checklist, but like, oh no, why did I die? Oh, because the amount of things that could fit inside my brain is, n-1, and the boss is doing n things, or there's n things to think about. And that's kind of the same when it comes to like a lot of games with execution requirements. It's like, oh shit, damn it. Oh. So, and then that obviously comes into add-ons as well, where you go, well, how do you reduce complexity and how do you keep your cognitive load down? What if my add-ons count my buttons for me instead of this? And that's exactly it, where you go, well, here's an example. Primordial Arcanic Pulsar. The balanced druid thing where after you spend so much AP, your next Star Surge or whatever procs your Celestial Alignment or your Incarnation. I could look at the buff up at the top right of my screen.
You could.
I could move the buff to the middle of my screen.
Yeah.
Or I could get the weak aura that tracks it in the little small thing, but makes it glow when my next spender will activate it. What does that do? That removes me needing to think about how much I have, because my screen just goes wee whenever I'm going to do it next.
So I see that for someone else, that's just something they get confused by and fuck up all the time.
They just get a proc randomly because they can't track it and go, oh fuck. Whereas I can go, okay, well, I'm about to proc this, so I'll bank. Or I'll be inefficient now and wait.
Maybe they won't say, oh fuck, maybe they'll just not notice.
Yeah.
Which is another side of things whenever so much is just, well, procs and things that are tracked by buffs, which, it's like, it's interesting. Like, I've had so much fun in and around Mob. But yeah, I suppose as well, like, the game itself has got sweatier, way sweatier since then. Mythic Plus fundamentally creates sweatiness because it is infinite. It's infinite scaling, and for people, I think that's another thing. There's a lot of people, they don't do Mythic Plus for gear, and I think that maybe causes like a little bit of a... Well, I think a lot of regular WoW players are like, I play RPG, I kill things, I get loot, very good. And keep on going, and whenever they finish their goals, they're like, great, I've done my stuff, I'll play another character, I'll just leave till the next patch. Whereas for like seasonal like Mythic Plusers, like a lot of them do actually want to, compete properly on that leaderboard. So I even wonder in sort of terms of like community perception, so many people don't really engage with the game in that way at that level. It's just an infinite scaling and how high that number can go. And I suppose what that then asks of people. Because I suppose a lot of people in M+, they start to get frustrated whenever the game feels too prescriptive or where they just have to use class utility to sort of bypass and break mechanics, but in a way where they, I suppose, feel like their agency as players goes away because that's just where the tuning's made it. And then it's kind of challenging because it's not like Blizzard says you've hit 3,000 rating. Good job. Done. You've completed Mythic Plus for the season. No, you can keep on going and be a winner. But it's not like PvP where you're just fighting the other guy. Instead, you're basically trying to break Blizzard's design or, perfectly maximize your way around those situations. And like, this is definitionally something that's only a problem for a tiny number of players because it is the very, very top of the top. But it then trickles down to probably that whole quartile or quintile, whatever percentage we want to sort of cut for it.
I would definitely argue closer to quartile than quintile, I think. But it's not even just about that. It's about, because obviously like the min-maxing is a problem for that. And you're like, well, none of this shit matters whatsoever. What if it did though? Cast your mind into an alternate reality where you could open your talents and make a choice. That was kind of interesting because it was small scales, scoped and scaled, and they didn't need to add new stuff every expansion to overwhelm you and prune you into, or to unprune you. And then prune you again into Oblivion, next expansion, and then come back, and then remove your talents and add them back again. And so it's kind of weird like that, where this is now obviously Jack is going to be coming from the perspective of someone who plays a lot of high-end M+, which is naturally one part of the player base, which isn't necessarily everyone, but it does actually raise a good point of it being a barrier to entry.
Well, if the people who are engaging at the highest level are beginning to say, this is too much cognitive load, this is just feeling bloated, I mean, if they're saying it, what hope does a new player have? Unless they are a sort of player who's already playing like, I don't know, like League or something where they know they're going into a new game, so there's a shitload they have to learn.
Even then, that's a pretty big barrier. And it's not just a barrier of, I want to be the very best M+er of all time, so I have to do this. It's like, if you open a game and it goes, well, here, figure this shit out, you go, oh, I'd rather not, thank you. Which is different between your leveling, and you get it a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
But, you buy a boost because that's the game push you to do that. Oh no, now you need go ahead and copy paste. And now you never engage with it, and it probably feels a little bit bad. Versus something where you kind of actually understand it a little bit. I feel like overwhelmed, even coming back from a break for a month to my own UI, lol. Yeah, Frankenberry.
Yeah, that can happen.
So this actually happened to me, right? This happened to me whenever I swapped to Feral again at the end of Amir Dusil. Because I wasn't enjoying Boomkin that much. I read about Boomkin, I learned what the talents did, I learned I didn't really learn what the talents did, I learned from the guides which combinations were going to work best, because the interactivity between them was like, I could figure this out, but on the current time scale and with my goal of do some damage, I'm just going to look. And I took the time to understand which like build did what, which is probably more than most do, but I still just kind of had to do that. And then it was Feral time, and I was like, I cannot read anywhere in this game how slightly different it is. I just have to go to because I knew Feral very well by the end of 10.1. And then 10.2 rolled around, I'm like,
you're parse fiend for your level back then. Yeah,
and I'm just like, I don't know what's changed, because I have to read all of my talents and like, do I have to go and check the fucking, like, not the patch notes even, because small things change. Do I have to check like the diff checker on Wowhead for all of my talents to see what's slightly different, what's different? Or do I just go to the page and go, well, okay, I see what the crack is now? And that's the thing where if you show me a video game where I have meaningful talent choices, I'll pick them up. But in World of Warcraft, it's very hard to do that because there's too much. And that is a barrier to entry to people who want to play the game properly. And not even properly, like, properly M+, big, blah, blah, blah. But even, like, the point is you're supposed to engage with the game in some capacity. And going, well, this isn't for me, so I'll copy paste from a third-party guide. That's not engaging with the game, and I can't imagine that being healthy. And it creates
the meta for a lot of players is go to sub-creation, see what's best, or as it always has been. We're definitely not saying this is a unique problem to WoW. This is a problem to
everything,
like all of video games right now.
Yeah, which I do have a section on other video games. So, like, basically, the point that Jack gets to is, it seems far too complicated. It's too complicated for them. It's too complicated for the average player, obviously, because these people are quite literally professionals a lot of the time. Yeah. And their living is to do this, or their living is attached to it by streaming and stuff like that. And it's like, what do? They are the theory crafters. So they theory craft and propagate the best thing to do, which the game then inevitably has to be balanced around, which means it's just completely scundering to have to understand all of this stuff in how it works. And obviously you can have a complicated game. You can have a game that's insane to like figure out and stuff, but that has to be part of like you have to make that design choice for your players and have your players engage with that. And that's why you've got insane, what do you call it? You've got like some of the insane indie games that are incomprehensible, but people really dig them. But then they don't have a broad audience of people who like copy paste guides and just go for it. So it's kind of weird. Like, that's kind of weird. And he also talks about too many buttons now. We were Dragonfly, we're getting to the point of we have all the buttons. We have some classes complain about too much. But generally speaking, we're like, okay, you've made a class. You've made a class in Dragonflight. Thank you very much. We'll enjoy the class. And now they're like, would you like more buttons? And everyone's like, not really. I'm kind of okay. I'm kind of okay, thank you.
Like they have said as a design pillar that they do want these to not be bloating.
Yeah, well,
So they were generally trying to focus more on passives and that sort of thing.
Passives aren't
but
bloat.
again,
passives just aren't button bloat. They are complexity bloat all the same.
Yes.
Because you're also saying
passives that actually make a difference and maybe involve tracking buffs and, you know, all of that.
Yeah,
yes.
why do I have 8,000 buffs when I send one spell to target dummy?
Sometimes it is you do that, just everything under the sun procs.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what's going on? Which obviously then, back in the past, that was Miss Bandaria. Everyone's like, you're cooking. This is beautiful.
Oh.
Excellent. Well done. This is wonderful. We love these.
I
Absolute
had
chef's
two
kiss
stacks
class
of readiness. That led to quite a strong opener for hunters.
Yeah, everyone's just chilling. Like, this is pretty damn good. And then Warlord shows up and where's all my buttons? Where's all my buttons? Blizzard, what'd you do them?
And then Legion.
And then Legion, where they...
All your buttons are now attached to a sword.
Yeah.
But it's all quite cool and fun.
Yeah, which is interesting. To even consider that, how the framing of it matters a little bit more. Because that was complication, but it was complication on top of simple baselines, basically.
And there were so many redesigns.
Yeah,
Of course.
that as well. Which some were good, some weren't great. But like, it feels like a cyclical thing of just, okay, well, we're going to add stuff to your class until it's too much, and then we're going to prune it. Or like, what? Are you designing a class, or are you looking after a fucking tree?
Well, I
like,
suppose the struggle then, because in my head it's probably, okay, keep them mostly the same. If you want to do a rework to something, like hunters, please hunters, then well, that's just my personal take. You know, do that. People can be excited about that. Maybe, you know, you take a look at the talents that people aren't using, aren't interested in, maybe try to design a new thing. But here it's very much a big new feature. You know, that's what they want to do. They want to do a big new feature. So they evidently think like,
of course it is. It's the hero talents.
Like, what do the people expect of us? And clearly they're like, okay, well, people expect, you know, either a lot of class work being done or maybe a new class, but, you know, we've already shipped one of those. Let's do something like this. But I suppose I do just think of like, the stacking complexity. Balancing this stuff's probably going to be quite tricky. Especially, it'll be quite challenging whenever, I mean, just thinking about 2 sets and 4 sets as then react, you know, as that will interface to the multiple builds of your spec that will exist, and then the multiple builds of your spec that will exist with each of the 2 hero talents that you can go with.
And we already talked about this 2 weeks ago. We talked about this before, because 2 sets and 4 sets, what they ultimately gravitated towards. In a lot of cases, this expansion was already, we're going to lean into specific talents. So nice choice. We're going to remove that with our 4 set, which I don't think is inherently bad, but it does mean you're offering these hero talents as a choice. You're going, would you like to play the fiery frosty man, or would you like to play the spelly slingy frosty man?
The fiery frost man or the frosty fireman?
Yes. Which flavor of incomprehensible would you like today? Okay, I'll take one flavor. And then you go, well, sorry, your 4 set actually supports the other thing. And you go, but that's min-maxing. Yeah, but when your 4 set says this button does extra stuff, you go take that button.
Well, now it'll probably mean for their 4 sets, they will certainly have a lot more to reckon with in getting one of those to work with everything.
That's what I'm saying. They gave up on that in Dragonflight. They gave up on that and said, fuck it, like the Feral example. Fuck it, Feral Frenzy. You're picking Feral Frenzy now.
But can they do that now? Because that's just regular ass talents. Whereas if they do that here, then they're kind of saying, no, you can't use, or, you know, can't, heavy air quotes, use one of the new features we put in this expansion for you. Like, then that would make me think that they would probably not want to take the same decision as they did there.
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of complicated, because I think I don't have a problem with the specs being hard or having high skill ceiling. And that's one thing that's brought up in Jack's video. Skill ceiling is less the issue compared to the fact that you have to understand it and have it all operate in your head. Because you can have complexity, you can make your classes hard, but hard being, there's a billion talents, please read them. And they all interact very interestingly. But if you somehow miss an interaction between something in the 4th row of your talent tree and then the final row of your hero talent tree, then you're going to pick the wrong thing. So pick the right thing, moron. Because there's a thing where, like, this is a comment from under Jack's video that I thought was interesting, which is someone who started with Dragonflight and enjoys being a little sweaty. My biggest issue with the talent tree is they're not intuitive. I should be able to look at a talent and know roughly how impactful it will be. instead I have to sim it or read a guide written by someone who simmed it. And that's kind of where it hit me. I'm like, yeah, everyone's just reading the guide written by the sim people.
Because a lot of the time
and you go, then you go, why are the developers doing this then?
You can understand what a talent will do when you look at it, but you can't readily understand in many cases whether it's better than something else.
Yeah, exactly.
That will depend on the tuning.
And also all of the situations, because you have to remember that what's going to be better in M+, literally like changes from dungeon to dungeon, changes from raid boss to raid boss. But that's where you get interesting because it's too much for people to make those decisions themselves.
To which Baseboned says, play with them and have fun.
Yeah, which you can't do because there's so many and they're so interweaving, which is when you go back to the, so you're saying just bring Miss Bandaria talents back? No. There's a fucking middle ground somewhere, right?
It's probably just keep the existing system and just keep refining, iterating, doing a little rework of a spec here and there when you feel like it makes sense.
Something like that.
Make some really cool tier sets. And maybe put some of those designers onto other things, because I'm sure there's a lot that they would enjoy designing too.
Yeah, that's the thing where, like, ultimately for me, it comes down to the point of, it feels like they're doing an awful lot of work for no real reason. Because it's like I say, but like the...
that's what kind of kicked this whole thing off when it just struck me that, like... What it was is, like, I just remember you explaining, you were reading whatever one of them was, and I was just like, Matt, what are we doing? Like, you know the way it's like you almost have that, like, I almost would say, like, fourth wall breaking moment where you're like, hang on, why are we playing our roles here? This doesn't make any sense. Is this all fake?
Yeah,
but you just kind of realize, like, there's more.
Yeah, so here's because obviously there's a lot of this stuff is passive power creep in the Frostfire, right? Mm-hmm. Like Blazing Barrier, Cast Ice Barrier thing. That's just power creep. That's a cool little way to go. Here's extra stuff, right? Fine. That's okay. Like Comet Storm,
it's okay, but it's
now
power
also
creep.
calls a meteor at 100% effective. Why?
Because, Matt, of the isothermic core that you just talented into.
Cool. Sweet. Sweet. Fantastic. You get extra Frostfire masteries for some reason. Okay, sure, that's fine. Severe temperatures. What?
Severe temperatures. Casting Frost or Fire spells increases the damage your next Frostfire. But you're just stacking up severe temperatures.
Yeah, is this necessary?
Or you could have 10%, reduced Frostfire bolt cast time.
Yeah.
So then that's actually an interesting thing. Style-wise, I can see like which one of those that I would maybe enjoy picking more. But you look at those and you're like, man, one of those certainly does seem like the one to pick, tuning-wise.
It's not complicated. It's complex.
Yeah, it's just stacked and stacked and stacked.
It's just stuff. It's just stuff that's kind of vaguely pointless.
The word stuff, actually, that is the thing that... Yes, that is the primary feeling that I had. It was like, this is more stuff. As in... You know, in Photoshop. So now this is an AI-powered thing, but they used to just have the content-aware fill tool.
Yes.
Or in, some of those things where you can sort of get a bit of music and stretch it out and it'll just fill in the middle. This almost feels like you just kind of got the class. You're like, all right, and I want 20% more design in this class. And then the machine just auto-filled in 20% more design.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, right?
That's what it feels like. Yeah. When I look at it, what do I think would be necessary? What do I think people expect when they get Frostfire? They probably expect this Frostfire bolt. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's this? Your AOE also does AOE of that stuff. Yeah. Do you really need everything else?
That was one of the things we came to towards the end, and I don't know what other people, in this case, the reactors, I don't know what they thought about it, but you would almost think like, just make that way smaller and more simple, please. And then just give us this cool fantasy, that cool fantasy, and it's like, at most, a button, and like a button and 2 choice nodes. And let the rest of your power scaling just happen because of, just gear and shit naturally. It's fine. We don't need the layers and layers and layers of stuff.
Yeah, that's what it kind of feels like to me, which is, it's really hard to argue, because I know obviously like people in chat have their different opinions all across this, which is good to see. But you're like, it's not necessarily saying one thing is bad or one thing is good or this is too complex, never change anything or anything in between or like it doesn't matter. Shut up. I just look at this and go, fuck, I'm tired. And that's where I'm at the part where when the War Within comes out and I play it as I will a player, as opposed to like trying to look at it from a content creator perspective over alpha and stuff. When I come to play it, what will I do? I'm probably just going to go, what's best? I don't fucking care. And then you go, well, that's just made me apathetic about a feature.
Well,
that's made a feature that makes me more annoyed at the game than actually enjoying it, which would probably be different if they were like, hey, what do you want to be feral? Can I have the cool new button that goes, wee? Give me that.